What if the healthcare system isn't designed to restore health, but to manage decline to make big profits? Now, I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but it is. What if inflammation is managed instead of resolved, insulin resistance is treated instead of reversed, and energy failure is ignored until systems begin to collapse? Because when repair slows, communication breaks down, and when energy fails, survival replaces healing. Low ATP isn't where disease starts, it's where decline becomes permanent. This is Kirk with the Elevation Channel. This is part 3 in a 3-part series titled Metabolic Sovereignty. If you are new to the channel, welcome. If you find any value here, please like and subscribe. If you know someone that should watch this video, please share. This series is called Metabolic Sovereignty for a reason. Sovereignty means control. It means understanding the systems that govern inflammation, fuel access, and repair, and no longer outsourcing that responsibility to a system that intervenes late and manages decline. Systemic inflammation, insulin resistance, low cellular energy. These aren't separate problems. They reinforce each other, forming a feedback loop that keeps people sick, dependent, and treated, not restored. This video focuses on the final collapse in that loop. Low ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is the basic unit of energy inside every cell. It powers repair, it enables communication, it maintains immune balance and regeneration. Without enough ATP, cells don't fail dramatically, they fail quietly, repair slows, signals weaken, adaptation turns into degeneration. Low ATP doesn't cause a single disease, it removes the body's ability to prevent many of them. When inflammation goes unresolved, when insulin resistance blocks fuel access, and when ATP production drops below what cells need to maintain order, the consequences don't stay isolated. They appear slowly, in different tissues, under different names. Neurological diseases like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, and cognitive decline. Cardiovascular diseases like heart failure and cardiomyopathy. Metabolic and endocrine diseases like type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, and metabolic syndrome. Immune, autoimmune diseases like lupus, Crohn's disease, and ulcerative colitis, musculoskeletal and chronic pain conditions. Even cancers like breast cancer, pancreatic, liver, and prostate cancers. Different diagnoses, the same system failing from lack of energy. At the center of this energy failure is the same structure in every cell, the mitochondria. Mitochondria are where ATP is produced. They're also where inflammation, insulin resistance, and oxidative stress collide. When mitochondria are damaged, energy production becomes inefficient. Reactive oxygen species increase, and the cell shifts into survival mode instead of repair mode. This isn't about feeling tired, it's about biological capacity. And this is where peptides enter the conversation, not as miracle cures, not as symptom suppressors, and not as shortcuts, but as biological signals, tools that interact with mitochondrial function, inflammation control, insulin sensitivity, and cellular communication. Many peptides being researched today don't force outcomes. They aim to restore signaling where coordination has been lost. That's why peptides don't make sense in isolation, and why they only matter when inflammation, insulin resistance, and energy are addressed together. Before we go further, I want to ground this. Before we talk about intervention, we need clarity. This is a short clip from part 1 breaking down what peptides actually are, without hype, without sales, and without shortcuts. Watch closely. Further, let's make sure we're clear on what peptides actually are, especially if you're new to this conversation. Peptides are short chains of amino acids, the same basic building blocks your body already uses to create hormones, enzymes, and signaling molecules. They're not stimulants, they're not painkillers, they're not designed to mask symptoms, and they don't force the body into an artificial state the way many drugs do. Instead, peptides tend to signal, modulate, or support biological pathways that already exist. They work with the body's communication systems, not against them. Think of it less like flooring the gas pedal and more like sending instructions to systems that were already built, but may no longer be communicating clearly. That distinction matters, because when inflammation, insulin resistance, and low cellular energy disrupt signaling, the body doesn't lose intelligence, it loses coordination. Peptides aren't about overpowering biology, they're about restoring the conversation. I want to pause here for a moment and say something important, because longtime viewers know I've always said that if you look in the description, you won't find me selling anything. That has changed, and I want to be very clear about how and why. I am not selling peptides, I'm not selling coaching, and nothing in this video is medical advice. What I am offering now is the OPP, Optimized Peptide Performance Apparel line. It's not supplements, it's not protocols, it's simply apparel made by the peptide community for the peptide community. Because I think this space, this conversation, and this culture are worth representing. If that interests you, it's linked below. If not, nothing changes. This content stays exactly the same. That foundation matters because peptides don't create intelligence. They help restore communication where it's been lost. What you're seeing in this series is something bigger than individual compounds. This series is called Metabolic Sovereignty, and sovereignty means control. It means refusing to let your health be dictated by a system that waits for failure, labels it inevitable, and then sells symptom management as care. Metabolic sovereignty is about reclaiming control over inflammation, insulin sensitivity, and cellular energy, because when those three fail together, decline accelerates everywhere. And today, we're focusing on the final collapse point. Low ATP. ATP is not just energy. ATP is repair capacity, immune regulation, cognitive function, hormone signaling, cellular survival. When ATP drops, everything slows. And when mitochondria fail, ATP collapses. That's why restoring mitochondrial signaling isn't optional. It's foundational. And this is where specific peptides and compounds enter the conversation, not to stimulate, not to mask, but to restore function at the source. First is SS31. It is a mitochondria-targeting peptide that binds to cardiolipin, a lipid found exclusively in the inner mitochondrial membrane. That membrane is where ATP is actually produced. When inflammation and insulin resistance damage mitochondria, the membrane becomes unstable. Electrons leak, reactive oxygen species rise, and ATP output drops. Research shows SS31 can stabilize this membrane, improve electron transport efficiency, and reduce oxidative stress, allowing mitochondria to produce energy more effectively. So how does this fight the three metabolic killers? It reduces mitochondrial oxidative stress to lower inflammatory signaling, preserves energy production to support insulin sensitivity, and stabilizes ATP output to restore repair capacity. SS31 is like sealing microscopic cracks inside a power plant turbine, not adding fuel, but preventing energy loss at the source. A big one is MOTS-c. MOTS-c is unique because it's encoded by mitochondrial DNA itself as a distress signal released when cells experience metabolic stress. Studies show MOTS-c improves insulin sensitivity, enhances metabolic flexibility, and helps cells use glucose and fatty acids more efficiently. Low ATP isn't always a lack of fuel, it's often a fuel access and utilization problem. Think of MOTS-c as like updating the software that tells an engine which fuel to burn and when, reducing waste and restoring efficiency. Here's how MOTS-c directly pushes back against the three metabolic killers. For inflammation, it improves metabolic efficiency and lowers inflammatory stress signals. For insulin resistance, it enhances insulin sensitivity by restoring cellular fuel access. And for low ATP, it helps with better fuel utilization and increases usable cellular energy. Let's talk about NAD+, which is not a peptide, but it is essential. It's a core cofactor required for ATP production, DNA repair, sirtuin activation, and mitochondrial resilience. Research consistently shows NAD+ levels decline with age, inflammation, and insulin resistance. And when NAD+ drops, ATP production stalls even if mitochondria are structurally intact. Think of NAD+ as like the electrical current in the grid. The machinery may exist, but without current, nothing runs. How this fights the three metabolic killers. It supports repair pathways, reduces chronic inflammation. It improves metabolic signaling, supports insulin sensitivity, and it enables ATP production, restoring energy availability. For something completely different, let's talk about methylene blue. It is not a new compound, and before we go further, let's clarify what methylene blue actually is, because it has a long and unusual history. It was first synthesized in the late 1800s and originally used as a dye, not a supplement, not a peptide. It's an industrial dye. Over time, it found medical use, including treatment for conditions like methemoglobinemia, and later drew scientific interest for how it interacts with cellular respiration and electron transport. Because it's a dye, methylene blue has some very obvious effects. It can temporarily turn your tongue blue, and it can turn your urine blue or green. That's not toxicity. That's chemistry. The compound is visibly excreted, which is one of the reasons it's so well studied. At low controlled doses, research shifted away from its color and toward what it does inside mitochondria. At low doses, methylene blue has been studied for its ability to act as an alternative electron carrier inside mitochondria. Instead of electrons leaking and generating oxidative stress, methylene blue helps shuttle them efficiently through the respiratory chain, producing more ATP with less damage. So methylene blue is like rewiring a faulty circuit, so electricity flows cleanly instead of arcing and burning the system. Now, how this fights the three metabolic killers: it reduces ROS, which lowers the inflammatory burden. It improves mitochondrial efficiency, supports insulin signaling, and it increases ATP per unit fuel, restores cellular energy. Retatrutide is often called a GLP-3 and framed as a weight loss drug, but that's a misunderstanding of its mechanism. It's a multi-axis metabolic signaling peptide acting on GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon receptors. Early research shows it improves insulin sensitivity, increases energy expenditure, and restores metabolic responsiveness. Weight loss isn't the mechanism. It's the downstream effect of a metabolic reset. Retatrutide is like rebooting the entire control panel, not just turning down appetite, but restoring metabolic responsiveness across the system. Now, how does this fight the three metabolic killers? It reduces systemic inflammation via improved metabolic signaling. It restores insulin sensitivity and breaks fuel lockout, and improves energy expenditure, which supports ATP recovery. So, these compounds don't compete, they stack functionally. SS31 protects the power plant. MOTS-c improves fuel utilization. NAD+ restores energy currency. Methylene blue improves efficiency. And retatrutide resets the metabolic environment. Together, they push back against inflammation, insulin resistance, and low ATP. This is not symptom management. This is systems restoration, the opposite of how modern medicine is structured. In previous videos, we have taken deep dives into all the peptides and compounds mentioned here today. If this message resonated with you, if you're someone who's tired of watching decline get managed instead of prevented, then help me keep this conversation alive. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next breakdown in this series. Like the video. It tells the algorithm this content matters. Most importantly, share it, because topics like metabolic failure, mitochondrial health, and peptides aren't naturally promoted. And someone you know may need to hear this before it's too late. And if you want to represent the peptide community beyond the screen, the OPP, Optimized Peptide Protocol Apparel line, is now live. This isn't about selling products. It's about giving this community a way to signal, connect, and further the conversation around metabolic health and peptides. You'll find the link in the description. Lastly, I want to hear from you. What topics do you want covered next? What peptides, pathways, or metabolic questions do you want broken down? Drop it in the comments, because this channel isn't here to manage decline. It's here to help people reclaim metabolic sovereignty. I'll see you in the next one.